I want to pick up a more proper introduction to something that I pulled out whilst talking a night or so ago. And that is that people socialize in all widest sense of that word, that people socialize to energize. As I was pointing out last time we taped, that in one sense calling man a social animal is to actually be referring to the fact that he engages in energy exchanges beyond any mere physical, mere animal level. But I wanted specifically, since I brought this up several meetings ago, to point out some very specifics for you to go on. When people go out to such things as concerts, music, to plays, to lectures, they go out for one reason. They do not go out to merely witness some form of talent. They go out to be energized. They go out to apparently come away receiving energy from the performer's emotions. Now, as you might suspect, I'm going to try and direct your attention more inwardly in a second, but out in life, throughout the ages, you have other areas, another example where people apparently are engaged in some form of misunderstanding. A prime example comes to mind. These get-rich seminars that are going on. They have been for a while now, but these get rich in the real estate, or how I made $1 million in real estate with no money down in my underwear. Those kind of lectures, and I could, if you know what I'm talking about, I could throw in religious services, except that perhaps the old established, those are too closely connected to the upper classes, but the real active religious services are a form of Think and Grow Rich, or how to prosper in a bad market and all that shit. At any rate, it is quite common to find other areas of life's body taking these real estate seminars, these get-rich courses and religious services, and part of life's body points in a very rational, critical manner that these kinds of activities are conveying no useful information. That some of these get-rich seminars, the guys that said how I made $1 million in the stock market in 6 months, some of them, they go so far as to point out all this information is available in the library. In fact, the information, and somebody with other credentials in the marketplace will say what this person is talking about is impossible, or they'll point out what this person is talking about is not only improbable, but the guy himself has just gone into chapter 11. At any rate, they say that these courses in some way are rip-offs, or that some religious services are rip-offs, because no useful information is being conveyed. All it is a gigantic pep rally. Life produces some real sharp critics here and there. It's all a gigantic pep rally. The only thing that is not a gigantic pep rally, let me stay on the area where I started, of lectures, religious services, if you can see the connection. The only place where they're not overtly a gigantic pep rally is when you get into the continuity classes, the real upper classes, those that do still fool around with religion. Then you're talking about the Episcopalians, the Church of England. You're talking about something that is a form of an evening of, perhaps, shall we say, Bach fugues. That the purpose is not to energize, the purpose is to comfort. And most people will not go out. I'm saying most people, the bell curve of humanity is not wired up to go out and socialize on the basis of help placate me or help soothe me. That's not the way it works. Now, there are graduations, as in everything about life, within what I just said, because you can go out for an evening of concert music. You can go out to the symphony, and, well, if they're just going to play, if we're just talking about one symphony, you take any Beethoven symphony, you're going to have the slow parts. You're going to have the parts. Or if it was an evening of just highlights, they might do, a Berlioz, and then they might do a Mozart, and then they might do some Brahms, So there might be pieces in there that almost will put you to sleep and soothe you. But that, as a rule, is not what makes people go out. People do not, they're not wired up to go take a shower, buy tickets, put on clothes, dress up, and go out to sit down and, in general, be soothed. They go to be energized. Now, it should be obvious to you, of course, from such things as sports events, that that's what's going on. But in areas, the reason I wanted to give you a more formal introduction and make a few comments about this, since I've been talking about that, in a sense, the context of what is said is not the end-all of the energy exchange going on. That is, you can be energized by going to the opera and speaking no Italian, and you have not memorized librettos, you don't know really what they're saying, but it's the sound of the human voice and other things you could point out, and I'm simply pointing out this. It is an energy exchange. And so, again, within certain graduated levels, within from extremely complex to extremely simplistic, that at times what is being said does not matter. And so people will go and pay out money, expend energy, to go be exposed to a lecture, to a seminar, to a religious message, apparently, that other people, quite as sane and as rational, that is another part of life's body, says this is a waste of time on the surface of what it purports to be, because people are paying X amount of money and spending X amount of hours going to this weekend seminar about how to get rich in the stock market, and it won't work. It's never worked, or in real estate. But it's some kind of fraud. It's not a fraud. And people who are not a part of a particular religion, particular attitude in some religious, under some religious guise, and say, well, what this person is talking about is gibberish. It has no basis in accepted theology today. The man is some kind of charlatan. He's up there putting on a show and stamping his feet and playing loud music and hooping and hollering. Nothing of any interest, nothing of any value, of any spiritual value is flowing from that minister, that preacher, that jack-legged mechanic to the crowd. All he is doing is just getting them wound up. That's the same sorts of people that if they were around political fanatics would say what those kinds of people have been historically talking about, to record, to write down if they were written down as some of the great fanatics of the world, and say what they were talking about, what they were encouraging the people to do or promising they would do if they had full power. What they were talking about is either it's impossible, it's improbable, unlikely, irrational. What in the world could those people have been thinking about to listen to that maniac talk? And what he said somewhere fell within what I just pointed out. Irrational, impossible, improbable, very uncertain, very unlikely. What was going on? Another aspect of energy exchanges that I have not really tried to rub your nose in, some of you should have, well, here it is. When we talk about an exchange normally, in the commercial world, the everyday world, an exchange, normally it's a win-lose, to varying degrees again. That someone gets the best of an exchange. Even though perhaps I should be using another word, I guess exchange literally, or maybe I didn't check the dictionary, could be referred to in one definition of an even. But normally when you think of an energy exchange, that is if you're going and a guy's going to entertain you, that you look at James Brown and his whole show, his whole review, his singers and his dancers and everybody else, and then James wears himself out and they have to drag him off the stage, then you would think, all right, there's got to be some inequity here. I mean, it's one guy, sure he's got these backup people on salary, but there's one guy and then there's 7,000 of us. And as we're leaving, I look around and it seems like all of us, but a few sore heads, are really hopped up. So, you know, somebody got the short end of this. In what appears to be a closed system, which is anytime you're dealing with less than the full dimensions of something, that is the 3D world, and me telling you that's not all there is, it can appear to be a closed system because you can't see the rest of it ordinarily. But within a closed system, as it appears to be, there is a curious, those of you of a more linear turn of city mind should find, it is possible that there are, and it's not possible, But it's apparently possible that there are equitable exchanges, that it's win-win, that everybody won, which in the city is impossible, generally speaking. That you cannot go and somebody apparently enthuse you and energize you because it had to cost them. And vice versa, if you did it, it's got to cost you. A little thing about me calling it energy exchanges, energy transfers, and the main general verbal purpose of humanity as being a conveyor of energy. The energy is there. It is not that you concocted it, or that James Brown has a bag of energy that he buys or he steals somewhere, and every time he puts on a show he opens it up and takes out some or sends out for a new supply. It's not in some way, although many entertainers, and whether they're known as entertainers or not, got all kinds of little habits and procedures and things they go through, that I'm sure that many of them, I'm positive many of them, believe that it does something. They pray, they meditate, they go in and rehearse. I'm sure all the serious singers, the Pavarottis, go in and spend some time actually singing. I'm sure a lot of them stand in the mirror, and some of them will put on a full dress rehearsal for themselves in private, or some of them maybe refuse to. But there's something that they believe gets them up. That's a common term. But what they are talking about is that I've got the energy to go on and put on a good show. But it's not. If you were thinking about how can it be that no one loses energy? How can one guy get on the stage, let's call it a one-man show, and apparently enthuse X number of people, that they all leave and they feel, if you question them, that let us say 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 all leave, and let us say that most of them said, I enjoyed it, it was worth the money or the effort. What they're saying is, I got energized. Or if you ask them, do you feel sort of up? Do you feel better than you did when you went in? And let's say if they all went, yes I do. How could that be? Then if they all did, just some little amount that they said that enough for them to say, I do feel more energized. Then you got to figure that the guy, the minister, the lecturer, the entertainer, the man has got to be near death's door. That if he gave out all this energy, and that's not it, because oftentimes if you don't know it, you can go backstage and they had to drag a James Brown or somebody just pouring sweat and he lost weight, and you go backstage and you think that the man had taken, 400 LA turnarounds, Benzodrines, that you'd think the man was up to here in speed. How can that be? Very simple. I don't have to point out to you, do you? Well, you're not the source of energy. James Brown's not. Pavarotti's not. Martha Graham's not. The lecturer's not. But an area wherein people apparently, or people do, but they appear to be completely unable to comprehend other forms of behavior and other forms of activity having to do with people going out to socialize, whether it apparently is on the basis of receiving some kind of instruction or being entertained. People do not go out to simply witness talent. Now you can say that you love music. You can say that you love music so much that you would crawl on glass across the street to see so-and-so, whoever it is. That he plays your instrument, or you're a vocalist and he sings or she sings, and it is such a talent it almost brings tears to my eyes to witness him or her do that. Fine. That's not why you go see them. That is not why people go out. They go out to be energized. They socialize to be energized. You could look upon, if you want me to stretch it a little, see if you can find some other place to peek into. You could say that all forms of entertainment fall into two categories. You go out and there's either going to be the presentation of some kind of new material, a new play, a new symphony, a new show by some rock band, a new painting exhibition. In other words, new material. Let's call it actually a performer rather than a plastic painter for the time being. An actual performer is either going to be doing new material, or else it's going to be material that is old, material that is known, like symphony concerts, And what you go to see, the material's already known. You may be able to whistle everything they're going to do or hum along, but you go to see a particular performer or performers do a new interpretation of it. So people could say, I am going to see something new because it stimulates me. I like new plays. I like new music. Or people can say, I don't mind going, or I prefer to go to something that is known. I love Shakespeare. I must have seen Hamlet 50 times in my life. But it's the fun of going, and to see a Gielgud do it once, and then to see Olivier, and then maybe just to see some local guy when they maybe try to do some modern inflections on it. But I never get tired of it, because each time it's a new interpretation, blah, blah, blah. Did I distract you enough? It's all to be energized. You can call it anything you want to. You can believe that you're going to see the material, or you can believe that you're going to see the performer. But it doesn't matter. And it's not, of course, that the people are lying about it. But you go out. If you got to see new material and you leave and you're not energized, and somebody questioned you, you were talking, if you're ordinary and talking to your companion, you say, I didn't get it. It was a nice try. The premise was pretty good. But, you know, in fact, some of the dialogue wasn't bad, some of the ideas, but you know, the actors were, it was either an off night or there were too many amateurs. All they're saying is, I did not get energized. And you consider the evening a flop. Consider everything that apparently will bring somebody out of their house. Consider all the many fine things that such attractions are called. And then consider what I just asked. And all the things that will bring somebody out of the house. Well, I would only go out under blah blah conditions. I would only go out and pay my money and stand in line for blah 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 blah. It would have to be at least on the artistic, if not intellectual level of la-di-da-di-da-di-da. There are certain activities within the arts, entertainment, that I might support, but it's got to be more or less, etc., etc., etc. It's all the same thing. I don't really care for the new ministry. I don't care for it since they've changed and came up with a new Bible, a new hymn book. They've changed the Mass into Albanian. I don't like it now that our minister wears nose and glasses every week. None of that is revolutionarily, that is, more complexly valid. Because people will do anything. They will pursue anything within their own certain wiring limits if they get energized. If they apparently went out, got in a social crowd, other groups of people, and went and were exposed to something that apparently they were the passive dancers. They sit down, their part of the dance from one view is, well, I paid my money, and I'm going to sit here. Show me. That's not really the basis people go out. It's enthuse me. Energize me. Think about it a second. Not enough of you thinking about it. Or maybe I did start at 2 point blank, and I should have snuck up on you. Think about it. Religion, lectures, dance, music, concerts, readings, back when they were popular. Now all of that apparently involved a performer and then the audience. Some gap, the spotlight. I mean the stage lights between the two. The raised stage. Now how about the whole affair of man being the social animal? Forget now entertainment. Now just think about life. Forget entertainment. Why does anybody leave the house? Other than what you have to do is you've got to go out and get food, you got to go get a job. But the rest of the time, you're on your own time now. You're not going out to a movie, you're not going to a play, you're not going to the theater. You're just going out of the house. Why? Maybe I just go hang around the shopping center. Maybe I'll go window shop. Why? What's the point? Well, I might see something I like, or just get me out of the house. People leave the house for one reason, when they don't have to be energized. And what energizes people? Besides that which energizes warthogs and possums, that is food, sunshine. But what else energizes people? That which is uniquely human. That which is at the hand of the nervous system. That which people can only get from other what? Trees? No. Oh, they're people. And you wonder why so many of the world famous people are hermits. No, you never wondered that, because the real ones you never heard of, see? The only thing you ever heard of was fake hermits. Erzatz hermits. K-Tel hermits. Well, before K-Tel, for those of you who know it, it was sound-alike hermits. As performed by hermits. But what you've heard of weren't real hermits. There was people that some of these sharpies up in the Brill building would pick up a bunch of kids, and they'd put out an album or a 45 as sounds like. And that's all you hear about in history. Some famous hermit. He wasn't famous. He was a sound-alike. The life just dug him up to kind of distract those who might be interested in a record that has a life and attitude of hermits. But everybody else has got to go out of the house, because there is that which they can get nowhere else except from other humans. It is an energy exchange that life demands, and there are people who swear that they're, if they knew the word, or there are people who would swear that they are antisocial. There are people that say that they have no particular regard, affection for humanity individually or collectively. But you do not find them living in caves. Because if they felt that way and lived in a cave, you'd never heard them say what I just said that they said, which I refer you back, all real hermits you never heard of. But the rest of them, people can say, I do not care for humanity. Just by and large, I have to go to work, but the rest of the time, I wish you fuckers would leave me alone. There are people who say that about life. But do you go, other than the time they're at work, do you find them at home all the time? They may be at home more than you are, but all the time? No. And even if they stayed home all the time, I guarantee you this. Are you ready? They got a TV. For those of you who in some way believe that you are above TV or badmouth TV, it's a cheap way to be energized. Real cheap. And if not that, a radio. Maybe a little teeny transistor. If not that, a book. It's hard to find a real hermit. Very hard. Because there is that which is a singular need for humans. And the need can only be furnished from energy coming from other humans. At times it can be random, at times it can be, and by random I mean of just getting out of the house and being in a crowd, going down to the mall and not buying anything, not even having a cent in your pocket, no intention of buying anything, and you just wander. You just go with this kind of flow of humans walking back and forth, milling around. Or even on a lesser level, you may force yourself, or even look for an excuse to at least get in a car or to walk down to the corner store to get a piece of penny bubble gum. At the level at which I'm taking it tonight, there is not anything much more complex for me to point out other than the fact that this is going on, has always been going on, as a part of human life, as a part of the purpose of life, and yet you have everything from treatises on theology to modern philosophers to your neighbor next door. But anyway, the people apparently with credentials saying, what is the purpose of life? That is the unanswerable question to humanity. We have nothing to go on other than these mythical tales coming down through religious stories. There is something to go on right in front of their eyes. There's nothing else they should be able to see. If ordinary intelligence was ordinary intelligence, to be able to see that there is a kind of social activity. They can see that. They even made the term. I didn't make up the term social animal. That man is in some way a pack animal. I didn't make that up. That man is gregarious. I didn't make up that word. That there is something about man that he wants to be among his fellow creatures. That he is not as solitary as a Rocky Mountain ram or a grizzly bear. That people need each other in some way. And of course from there it's just one real slippery step into the mire of, we're all little God's children, and God wants us all to be together and be nice to each other, except when we're killing each other. Man serves a purpose, and an additional purpose also, but serves a purpose in the food chain, and then he serves one above, beyond, around the corner from, more complex than simply the material food chain, and it is an exchange of energies. People, I've never even seen this yet. But now I said it, surely somebody's done it. That there has never been, biologically and otherwise, psychologically, as far as my little reading, any great interest shown in the disproportionate diversity of human beings within the race of Homo sapiens compared to any other class of sentient life. That is, I don't know how many different subspecies of beavers or minks there are, but you look at them and most beavers look alike, right? Most dogs. I mean, what are we going to come up with? 10 or 20 dogs that if you had kind of an archetypical drawing, almost any dog in the world looks almost like one of these 10 or 20, right? But humans? Jesus Christ. And dogs, how many different temperaments? Let's call that their temperament, their kind of personality, their individuality. How many they got? 2? I could stretch it maybe and say 4. Maybe 4 temperaments. But you look around at humans, and as people in the city would want to say, if I point this out, they might say, you're right, there's almost an infinite variety of temperaments, personalities, individual makeups, certain combinations that make people, you're right, very diverse. It's not very diverse. It is so out of proportionate that you would think that somebody would have taken that as being the area of their expertise, to make a name for themselves, to come up with some kind of theories, or at least, as they say in the city, I may not have the answers, but at least I'm intelligent enough to present the problem. They hadn't even gotten around to that yet. And of course the reason is, or one of the reasons I can give you verbally is, that man has got to produce more complex energy than any other creature, and it takes more diversity. If there was less diversity, the energy being created, that is, transmitted, transferred, would be less complex. If humanity was divided up into, and I'm just using these as visible examples, this has real no more complex meaning, but if man was only, let's say, 2 religions, it wouldn't matter what, everybody was either Jewish or Muslim, let's say. Then, in the area wherein there are apparently religious conflicts, as they say in the city, which is immaterial, but as they say then, there would be less complexity of the apparent conflicts religiously. But as it is now in certain areas of the world, you not only got the Jews and the Muslims at each other's throats. For instance, Lebanon leaps to mind. Over there, you even got Christians. And you got all 3 going at each other, right? There is a complexity in humanity that requires a diversity that is, I'm understating it, just absolutely out of proportion to the size of humanity, numerically, and any other creature. And I'm saying out of proportion, not really, not for the purpose it's serving, but I'm saying that even humans in the city, that no one seemed to have ever spotted that and thought, well, that's strange. Or maybe that infers something. It is living in an unseen way the required complexity. Of course, from another view, what does this give rise to? It apparently gives rise, from another city view, that this very thing, to additional areas of potential and executed conflict. That if, let me now play the point of ordinary consciousness back in the city for a second. Then, from one view, ordinary consciousness, ordinary city consciousness could respond to what I said just a few minutes ago and say, wait a minute, what you said with that example about if everybody was either just Jewish or Muslim or Protestant and Muslim, Protestant and Catholic from some areas. If that were true, what you said as that example, that had some validity, but wait a minute. You got off on the wrong track, because from another view, if we could cut out, no offense to our fine Hindu and Buddhist brothers, but if suddenly the whole world were just any two religions, in a sense, we'd be progressing, would we not? Because then, the very example that I use, City Consciousness would say about that in certain areas of the world, we got three religions with each other. At least we'd have it down to just two armed camps, right? And so that'd be some kind of progress. Really? Yeah, from a city view it would, wouldn't it? What it would be saying is things would be getting more simplistic. Life would be then finally running downhill. But they can't see it that way. They would say, well, if we only had two religions, of course what they're thinking, those kind of people speaking for life over in that little small area, what they're thinking is, hey, if we only had one religion, or maybe no religion, God, things would be a lot saner and safer for everybody. Because they would point out, well, look at the numerous wars, look at the individual conflicts going on now. The people apparently arguing over religion. Boy, how dumb. Or as they like to say, how ironic. People killing and hating each other on the basis of religion. Ha ha. Of course, those that like to say that, that's instant feeling of superiority. That they can see that, of how dumb. The diversity results in what is oftentimes observed in the city. Quite natural. There's nothing strange about it. Observed as additional conflict. It's not just religion. I can pick out political persuasions. I can pick out race, nationalities, all forms of feelings of individuality. I could point out from the city view that if we had less of that, we would have less conflict in life. In the city we go, here, here. Those that could hear it, those that are even paying attention, we go, that's true. It may be true, but it won't do. Because if we did, we'd all be through. I'm not going any further, don't worry. So, to rhyming I bid adieu. That's it. Of course, I don't think I'll say anything about what or where, if at all, this kind of activity would have to fit in somewhere to the general scheme. You can't escape the kind of bases that runs everything else in the city. So what does what I just said have to do with this, if anything? Damned if I know. Oh, I know, but damned if I know. But your interest should be this. Not only does it seem like on the good night, when all the moons are in the right house and the fifth dimension are back together, in the age of Aquarius, when everything seems to be just right, apparently you can come here and not just get entertained and not just have a few laughs, but leave, and it's like I have spurred you on again. That is not the purpose of this. That is part of my job, but that is not the end of this, because now if that was the end of that, if we were even going to put a comma there, you would have to realize that the premise of this would be different. That is, that the premise, to start off with, would have to be, if not an outright statement on my part, it would have to be the tacit understanding that you have got to follow me. That I have got some kind of secret, and so you're lucky to find it, but you're going to be dancing backwards with me in this information, or at least me, the rest of your life. And so you might as well get used to it and submit. Submit, damn it. And remember the guy's sister that used to show up sometimes to the guy at the park, would holler, you know, try it? I did, and I liked it. You don't remember that, eh? Next time Kyrut talks to me, I may tell him the kind of success he's having with you people, and see if he wants to go into another field of endeavor. At any rate, this would have a whole other premise. It would be ordinary that this would fit the definition of a cult. And as you see, those of you who have been around just any length of time, or those of you who've seen the tape for the first time, if you've got any conception, any feel for this, you would realize, without me even saying it, this obviously does not fit that mold in any way. So what are you left with? That apparently I can enthuse you when things are just right and spur you on, and at the same time I am simultaneously, not always verbally by any means, but simultaneously I'm sort of kicking you toward the shins, if not your private parts, giving you the stiff arm of, stay away. Don't start clinging to me. Now, I'm not going to physically, literally lead hundreds of people in a dance. I'm not going to carry you, in other words, literally. So what are you left with? What could you get out of what I've been talking about being energized on the personal level? Oh, all right, I'll tell you. Look at it this way. Take what I just said and look at inside your own nervous system right up here in that great theater in the round. The human nervous system, and look at the theater as this, that right up where line level consciousness of the city is, look at that as being the stage. And all your good old people, your audience, whatever would take you out of the house, whatever it is that you think is your field of interest or the information you want, and who you got to energize. How are you going to put on this kind of socializing internally? Let me remind you of another one that Kyrut did within the last month or so. He asked the question, how can one, without enthusiasm, how could one, I'm not going to say I'm quoting you exactly, how can one enthuse others if one is not a carrier oneself? How could one energize somebody else about something if one was not energized oneself by it? All right, let's jump back out for a minute out of your own nervous system, apparently back out here. At first, wouldn't you think that was correct? How could you go and expect, let's take an old piece, old material, go and hear Mozart, unless the performer, to really enjoy it. It's not that all kinds of people couldn't sit down and do Mozart. But let us say that you love Mozart, that you're even a member of the Semi-Pro Mozart Society. I sort of like that. And so there's somebody that has a real reputation. You even have some of the records. You go, but it's on the basis that the person, the performer, is very pro-Mozart. That the guy or girl, the performer, loves Mozart. Or else how are they going to apparently convey any feel for Mozart to you if they don't feel it? All right? In fact, I can carry it a little further and really confuse some of you. It would seem to be what Kyrut said, that how could one convey enthusiasm, emotion for something, energy for something, if one was not already a carrier? To maybe look blank. If one was not already bit, if one was not already infected with enthusiasm oneself, how could they ever convey it to somebody else, right? That just seems obvious in the city. Well, let me tell you something else. Let's go around the corner. At the ordinary level, the more enthusiasm someone has outside of certain performing arts, the less they know what they're doing. Now take it out of performing arts, that is, take it out of somebody reinterpreting known material. That is, now take it into the area that somebody, a psychologist, a lecturer, a cult leader, that they apparently are teaching something new. Or they could be, if you can follow this, even though I said it otherwise, it's their own new interpretation of some kind of spiritual, historical ideas. The more they can apparently enthuse some group of people, what I'm saying is right around the corner, a little more complex version of this, would appear to be just the opposite. That the more they are fanatical, the more they are frantic, the more that they are apparently just almost uncontrollably passionate about what they're doing, the less they know about it. We got to turn the audio over just a second. Back rolling. Well, I'm going to leave this real quick. Those of you who can hear it, it's just another example, among other things, but it's another example of that which I can set up and point out, even things that by and large have never been seen in the city. Nobody's ever thought about it in the city. And present it to you, and you can go, hey, yeah, that's a fact, Jack. And then if you listen, though, I can take it and stretch it right around the corner. I can make it a little more complex. And it's not a fact. Apparently, you just saw something for the first time, something brand new, because it was correct. It was awfully close to being true, though, because it's not complete. But I am, within certain parameters, I am telling you the truth that somebody apparently trying to convey enthusiasm on some subject that seems to be, or they claim is singular with them. That there's something they're teaching. The more impassionate they are, it could be political ideas, new economic theories, which that'd be a laugh to see, somebody enthusiastic about that. That's a knack bee, isn't it? I was just trying to picture a real enthusiastic meeting of economists, or even just amateur economists that just are interested in it as a hobby, and them all getting together in Vegas and just raising hell and having a big... But at any rate, the first thing the example I was backing up to point out to you real directly, that this is within certain, quite distinct areas, but it has certain limits because it's flawed like everything else. For me to say that the more impassioned that somebody is about, well, here's the truth, here's what I have to tell you, here's the brand new interpretation of the Bible or Buddhist sayings, or here's new information that I got, I'm in touch with people outside our solar system. And here it is. The more the person seems impassioned, and that is, they apparently convey it and energize other people. And people leave you outside, and if you said, what's going on there? My wife drugged me here, my girlfriend. And as soon as I got and found out it was a guy claiming he was in touch with other people from another planet, I wanted to get out of there. But I'll be damned. Right now, I wonder. I mean, that guy's one of the best speakers I ever heard. I figured it was a maniac. I was trying to get out of there, but I've been trying to get in this girl's car for a long time, and so I figured, I'll hang around. And you say, well, what exactly did he say? Well, I'm not sure. You'll have to go hear for yourself, but I'm going to tell you what, the guy's not a maniac. I mean, he's not run-of-the-mill. All the guy is saying then is there was a kind of energy that got conveyed from the performer to me, and I didn't expect it, but I felt it. Right, the first area that I was pointing out to you. In a very real way, the more impassioned, in a mechanical way now, the way life is wired up, the less likelihood, the less possibility there is that the person knows anything about what they're talking about. Do you hear me? Well, those of you who are real good, won't take but a second, I cannot resist going here a little further, even into the interpretation of known material. How about those of you who like vocal music? So let's say popular music. Somebody's singing. Somebody's singing like a love song, one of the old standards. A song's really about heartbreak and losing one's love. Or it could be an actor doing a part, somebody doing a reading from Shakespeare, a part of a scene. There was real heartbreak, caused emotion, and you enjoyed hearing it. And you get backstage and you meet the actor, if you people don't know this, or you meet the vocalist, somebody that's there with a microphone and singing. One of the old standards, and maybe you can see tears in their eyes, and it makes you almost cry, and you go back and talk to the person, and the person is almost sans any particular emotion like that. But they're almost illiterate. And I mean that in the full sense. They're very simplistic. The song was an act. And they didn't even know how to tell you that. They're not even really sharp enough. If you said, that song meant so much to me, they'd go, well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And all they do is take it personally that you like me. You liked what I did. But if you said, that kind of song, I've never heard anybody take that song about, set 'em up, Joe, da-da-da-da. It was like I was sitting there in a little bar and thinking about the lost love. And if you start looking them in the eye and you start that shit, they'll begin to look off like, go away. Because they're not interested in that. If you're not going to talk about them, they're not interested. And to them, it was just an act. They don't listen to the song. It means nothing. The point is, actors, which are good song stylists, I was trying to include for you. The interpretation of some material that may cause some energizing with the crowd, that people go, God, Sinatra can sing, or Streisand can sing. You notice I'm avoiding right now for a second more contemporary so-called R&Rs, but they're talking about somebody interpret a song that really gets to you. It's the same thing as an actor. You hear why I stopped to give you that couple of seconds, turned into a couple of minutes. You could believe, and people are wired up to believe, well, wait a minute. You look at a Sinatra and you figure a Streisand, whoever, throw in your own, and you figure the kind of life. It took a guy or the girl 60 years to live such a life, a complexity of heartache and the many experiences to interpret a song like that. And once they're off the stage, they can't remember the name of the song. They can't remember the words of the song. It was just nothing. The same way with an actor. Somebody wins an award. You saw it and you've seen it several times, and this one scene makes you cry. And that cut. You know, film stuff, you're just using little snippets, just 30 seconds at a time or less. If you were there at the stage and you saw who your favorite actor is, and actually crying him or herself, and what they're talking about, and you go cut, and they walk off, have a cigarette or something, and if you rushed up and said, that scene, not just your acting, but that scene, I mean, how you must have studied to put that kind of emotion, the kind of life you had to leave to bring that kind of experience to this part. The more passioned, the reason I went off of that for a second, at the very mechanical, the very automatic city level, the more impassioned the performer is about what's going on, the less personal connection, the less knowledge, the less involvement they most likely have. That is the rule. And that's where I started out. Then I said, take it a little further. Well, the first part was that they apparently would have to be very involved, and then the second part is take it further, that they would not be involved, that they do not know what they're doing. Where does this fit? Where does this fit? How can I apparently enthuse you? How apparently can I be less than standing up here night after night talking in a monotone, sitting in a chair with my legs crossed? Now, I'd ask you that, plus I got another question. How come I'm not up for an Academy Award? Now back to you. How come you're not up for an award? When you talk to you about this, when it's been apparently a good night here and I got you enthused, and then even you made notes that something seemed to click in you. Maybe just something I said, but just something clicked in you, and then you go away. And then you go backstage to meet yourself, the performer. That you had this thought that struck you sometime along the way. All right, enough of this crap. He's told me enough. I've told myself enough. I know at least one area that I've got to do something right now. I've got to do it. Got to do it. And it's like you walk backstage, the you that just said, I got to do it. I'm going to start tomorrow. And you go backstage and say, what a performance that was, for you to finally say what we're going to do. And you get back there and find that thing, and it's going... That which passes for I've been calling it a ruler lately, a king. That which passes as a passionate performer, when you get backstage, when you get home and you talk to yourself, and it's off the stage, that is, it got through, it said, by God, he's right, I'm going to quit doing so-and-so. And so you leave here, and you get home, or you're driving home, and you think that that performer, you just had James Brown, you just had Billy Graham, or you just had the Pope, you just had Laurence Olivier, Kirk Douglas or somebody said, all right, we're going to stop doing so-and-so, aren't we, gang? And the whole crowd, yeah, tomorrow we're going to start selling real estate and make a fortune. Yeah! And apparently maybe I helped do it. You attribute it to me, but then there you are driving home and you've decided, all right, I'm going to quit smoking. I'm going to quit getting mad. I'm going to start running more. And it's announced by some real performer in you to such a degree that you go, yeah, yeah, hey. Now you're driving home and it's like you went backstage and you met Olivier or James Brown. Sure is a lot more fun when you're on the stage, Mr. Brown, Mr. Pope. Well, you got a way about you, I don't know. You got to remember this, it takes two to tango, though. It takes two to dance. It's not just when he was on stage. You had to be in the audience, because if you weren't in the audience, you and everybody else, James wouldn't put on a show. The guy teaching the real estate thing, he wouldn't go to an empty room and say, God, I know nobody's here, but I am so excited. I am so excited about this secret I found of how to make $1 million without even doing shit. I got to tell somebody. I'm going to talk to you anyway, even though you're not here. There's got to be an audience. You're partially to blame. That is, you're partially dancing. But you find, do you not, that you get backstage and all these people turn out to be clowns. Literally. The passion is there, but you say, God, the kind of life you had to lead, there's no doubt in this dry sand for you to be able to sing about night and day, or you're my baby. What a life you had to lead. And you find out it's nothing. Well, you find out the guy that got you all enthused about how to make $1 million, you go outside and you find out that the sheriff is waiting. They got a judgment on his car. They've stripped him of everything he's got. He's living off the money he collected tonight. That's what it is. You go backstage and you find the Pope. He got a flask in his back pocket. A couple of young boys hanging over here waiting on him. A couple of young girls. But I'm talking about in you now. I'm not talking about the Pope, and James Brown, and Billy Graham, or Streisand. We're talking about inside of you. Where is the enthusiasm? Where is the energy to pass on to yourself? Where does it come from? Why don't you notice it this way? I want to hit, before we run out, some more areas that are rather practical. My suggestion, even though it is not advice to the lovelorn or medical or psychiatric treatment. There's some things I'd hit on recently. Let me wrap them a little closer in a good old, it's not Havana leaf. At least it'll be smokable. There's a certain way that a real revolutionist, I suggest to you, would treat himself almost with bemused condescension. Himself. Almost treat himself like a retarded child. I must admit I'm not surprised to hear a few giggles out there from you people on tape, but this is not a joke. All performers are like retarded children. If they're operating on the basis that I simply need to be seen, that this dance is my life, showbiz is my life, which I've already had Kairu point out, or vice versa. Maybe he had me. I keep forgetting, how does channeling work since I started referring to it as that? Is he doing me or me doing him? Is it, well, somebody tell me later. I always get that confused. He pointed out that it was all show business. It's all show business. And there is a way in which everyone who is saying, hey, look at me, has no other talent. But now, please be advised, I am not talking about singers, dancers, lecturers, musicians, concert pianists. I'm talking about everyone in the sound of my voice who is human. All performers are children. The only reason that ordinary people would be impassioned about anything is they don't know what they're talking about. Remember, that was the first stage. So how do people get impassioned about themselves? What I'm going to do, I'm going to get up and I'm going to make some serious changes about myself. Because I'm going to tell you the kind of guy I am. And you're at home alone now. There's nobody to tell. You're telling you, I'll tell you what kind of guy I am. As per my own decision, do you recall a few weeks ago I had something reread from some years back about my story of the guy that found himself suddenly locked into this pitch black house. Remember? And this disembodied, frightening noise. You also recall that going down toward the end of the story, almost like the guy being Jiminy Cricket instead of whistling in the dark, this invisible voice, he wanted to go into this stage of singular human energy exchange, by not only being able to live, he wanted to talk about living. He wanted to tell the voice what kind of guy he was. And you remember that disembodied creature obviously could not have cared less. Anybody ever think that I wrote that story for any particular purpose, that meant anything? Now, within the audience, within everybody, apparently you've got at least one audii that does care. That you get up and you do your da-da-da, and I left my heart, and you woke me, baby, and you play, and you do that, and there's at least, that's what a partnership's all about. Or they wouldn't be partners. You do that, and there's at least one audii in everybody that goes, Sometimes it applause, sometimes it says, you're not up to stuff. But you do have an audii, not an audience. It may only be one person, but you got that one person. And so some energy exchange goes on. It's an energy exchange. If you do your show, or if any performer does a show, and everybody says, hey, it's salad time, and they pelt the stage with cabbages and tomatoes. That's an energy exchange. Everybody says, boy, get him out of here, you guys. Terrible. That's an energy exchange. And so that can happen within you. Would anybody take my story and believe that there's almost like a dark black hole, my pitch black room, a disembodied voice somewhere in here? It's just never had a name. But it's a voice that the show goes on, and the voice doesn't seem to care whether the show is good, whether it's bad, whether it's singing, whether it's dancing, whether it's fast, whether it's slow. When it comes to that area of human performance, of human exchange, that is talk, not living, but talk about living, that there is this one area, a pitch black room that this guy found himself in. No way out, just there. And he goes into what to him and everyone else is the supreme human energy exchange. He tells the voice, wait a minute, quit moving around. Quit frightening me, be still a minute, and I'll talk to you and tell you something real interesting. What? I'm going to tell you what kind of guy I am and what kind of life I've lived. And that disembodied voice was just, if you recall, was just absolutely overcome. All right, back to the truth, not my sarcasm. That's my story. The voice could have cared less, to use that great turn of phrase. No interest whatsoever. May I assume that some of you suspect that I am suggesting that such a black room with a disembodied voice, a creature that apparently is dangerous and frightening to the performer, but is there within everybody, that has what I am suggesting is almost no interest whatsoever in what kind of guy you are. And it's frightening. Some people who get exposed to this sort of piecemeal by accident, just hit it one time, sense a similar sensation from this. Someone blame it on me. It's the same sort of thing that it seems to be. You fill it in. Something else that Kairoot brought up lately. You remember that he was talking about dancers, and that no matter what kind of music apparently is going on, that all dancers are engaged in their own particular form of a folie à deux, dual madness. Now he pointed out dancers out here, but let me, if I may be so bold, to complex it, to stretch it up near the corner, that there is a folie à deux inside of each person within your own partnership, because both aspects must share the major madnesses. If they did not, you would be part of that small minority that is classified by the city as being too unstable probably to be out loose. You'd be locked up. You'd be mentally ill, in other words. So there is a dance a continual dance, even when you're apparently not moving. Well, inside the partnership, that is, within everybody, that feeling, that wired-in molecular sensation that there's at least two areas of me in here, or else I could not talk to me. I could not even have thoughts, because I wouldn't know what the thought was. I could not say to myself anything such as, all right, I'm going to cut down on sweets. I couldn't hear that. There seems to be two, because there's obviously got to be the one who is eating too many sweets. And now here's another one that says, and you can call it anything you want to. You can call it a different attitude. You can call it anything, but there's at least two. There's a speaker. Well, I've been through this enough. If you are conscious, there's the awareness that there are two, there's a partnership in there of some kind. But there is a folia-do going on in everybody that there has to be from both of these aspects. And they can apparently, the reason I'm bringing this out, they apparently can verbally be in great conflict. That is, that one of them is saying, I am totally against something you're doing. That you are insane to continue drinking like you do or taking cocaine, and I got to stop it. All right, I'll stop tomorrow. That sort of thing. All right, you could say at the ordinary level, wait a minute. This is not a folia-do. They are not in step together. Contraire, Pierre. They share the major madnesses. It is a shared madness. Just because one of them says, I don't approve of it, what does that mean? Does he stop it? Can he stop it? Yeah, but I don't approve of it. We seem to have a very low energy and info batting average in this particular inning, do we not? So not being one prone to waste my time too severely, I'm about to drop this, but I brought it up for a reason. The kind of apparent self-criticism that people have of one another, I mean within themselves, about themselves, that their apparent partners have against each other, does not belie the fact that there is, or you would not have anything resembling a stable personality. The madness, the major madnesses that are you, as I'm calling them, are shared, even when they are apparently, the voices in you are in conflict, which almost everything in you is open to some conflict, or else you would have no desire to change. You again would be in a hospital or unconscious. You would not be mortally intelligent, even at the minimal level. Your nervous system would not be functional in the most physical way up to the higher areas of the brain. Were you not internally in continual conflict, uncertainty, doubt about what you're doing? One voice talking to another voice, one form of behavior apparently talking to another form of behavior. But I want you to see that there is a shared madness to it all, that they both dance to that same tune. Even if it's one saying, I've got to stop this. There's only one reason that some voice in you says, I've got to stop this, because there's another voice that says, I ain't going to stop this. Anytime, if you're attempting to do this, that you feel as though I am in some way insane, I am absolutely mad. I think the term folia-do, because madness has a certain, I thought, elan to it that nutso doesn't have. But by madness, I don't mean it, believe it or not, in a pejorative sense, because it's all madness. But it is shared. It is not that there is a severe or a real conflict within you, that there are things in me that, all right, I'll use your term, you would say. All right, I'll call some of what I do madness, but I realize it, and I'm struggling with it. Maybe I don't have the power to blah, 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 blah. No, 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 no. Folia-do. It is a shared madness. It's got to be. You would be unstable. You would not have been sane enough to ever get this far. Assuming all of you got this far. Assuming that with some of you it is a folia-do between you and I, that we're just imagining that you're here, but that's another story. I'm just going along with it. Let me take it a little step further, since maybe this will distract some of you. A real revolution is somebody involved in whatever the hell this is. If you get to a certain speed, you would not really be depending upon any codified method. You'd simply do what it is that you do, and that's it. I thought again I'd point out, at least hint, why, from many respects, this doesn't seem to have a beginning, an end, and worse still, many of it doesn't seem to have any sides. You can't tell when you're going off the road. It seems like I keep moving the road around, or I just fly off, get to a curve, and I'll just fly off, and suddenly you figure, well, it's down a ravine. He's finally gone too far, and suddenly I'm back on some other road. It just keeps moving. The idea that is wired into humans, and it's part of the molecular system, the cellular structure of life, that there has got to be an exercise of power. There is beavers, trees, from the particle level on up and into the other direction. There is the exercise of power. When it comes into humans, I've been using the term of the dominant and the submissive, dancing forward, or some people dancing backwards, whole groups, attitudes dancing forwards, other attitudes having to dance backwards. Within this exercise of power, always turns out, and from little bitty things just between a couple of people, it would be known as their routine between them, the habit of their relationship, all the way from that to real codified structures of a society, their laws, their mores. People cannot live, ordinary people, without a kind of formalization of something. Codified, I guess that's used more in the legal sense that some of you know. It's like having ways that you behave, whether it be laws or just suggestions or beliefs in certain forms of morality. But codified is like either written down, or else it's become part of the common accepted knowledge and behavior of some group of people, some tribe, some city, some state, that this is the normal way to behave. That is an exercise of power. People insist on it. People don't know what to do without it. Even people that say, I don't believe in all this crap. I left my church. Hey, fuck morality. But they got to have it to even have something to say, hey, to hell with this, I don't like it. Without it, people cannot live. Just trust me, I'm not going to waste a lot of time here. They cannot live without it. And yet, to do this, there comes a point that if you're ever going to get to speed with this, if you're ever going to get to where you're not simply an audii, you're going to find out. Well, you'll want to thank me, but I don't take thanks. And you can thank me all you want to, and I'm still not going to send you anything for your birthday, so don't waste your time. But you'll thank me that apparently that I have done a greater dance, no offense to JB, than James has ever done, because I kept running right up to the edge, and I never did actually codify this and formalize it. That I never did actually grab you in some kind of real monkey grip with super glue in my hands and start a dance that you couldn't get out of. In other words, all the times you kept thinking, well, why don't you just come out and say, because I believe you mean so-and-so, why don't you just say it and get it over with? The day will come, if you ever get to speed, that you'll say, God, what an act. That he would take me right up to the edge, and he actually never said, he actually never codified all this. Because if I did, then I'd started stabbing you. I would be stepping on you and knowing what I was doing. I would be actually hurting you and knowing it. I'd be aware of it. Now what I'm telling you is, there's a kind of freedom that is stupefying if it could be put upon ordinary people. They would drown in it. They would go insane from it. They would truly go mad from it, because there is no standard codified method to do this. And I can talk about an assumed fictitious code of conduct, and I can tell you things that you absolutely should or should not do. There is no method to this. There is no codified method. It's not that some Jewish mystical system is not right, or some Sufic school within Islam is not right, or this or that's not right. It's not that anything in particular, any form that's ever been tried is not right. It's this. There is no form. There is no method. But I can't start off telling you that. Well, I can, but it's meaningless. You can go, oh, hey, that sounds great. I'm really for that, because I don't like forms and methods. So tell me all about, I mean, if that's your method, I'm all for it. See? The method is this. That once you know what you're doing, once you're up to a certain speed, your method is you do what you do. That's the method. But it's not codified. It's not my method. It's not somebody else's method. It's within the life method. But it is never codified. If it is, it won't get you anywhere. It cannot get you anywhere. And people believe. History is full of it, right until today, that people believe, well, I'll take up with some cult, or I'll try and study this ancient method, or this modern method, and I don't agree with everything that the school taught, or this religious teacher, or this lecturer taught. I don't agree with all of it, but it's a good framework. I'll position myself there, and I'll start from there. But then as I grow and go along, I'll be able to add my own views, and I'll be able to expand myself, and blah, blah, blah. And you can't. There's nowhere to go. You're in a method, you're in a method. You're in a uniform, you're in a uniform. That's it. You're on the train, you can't get off the train. You apparently can move about. You can open the window, close the window. You're still on the train. You can think, well, I got some power over it because I bought my ticket. I decided where I'll go. So I do have some free will. Stop the train then. Well, it'll stop in a minute. Yeah, it may, but you stop it. And once it stops, you decide when to start it back up. Well, I mean, that's not important. It's on a schedule. I'm sure it'll start back up. You're probably right. But let's say you make it run. Well, you're being silly, of course. Well, aren't I always? Well, thank you. The method is that a real revolutionist would just do what he does. That's it. Give me a couple of minutes at the end of the tape. Morning, all right? A few other practical matters that I mentioned. Do you remember I gave you an absolute cure, not ordinary people. That if you had had some estrangement with somebody and just suddenly act on the pretense that it never occurred, that everything is just right now. And many of you thought you got something out of that. One other thing I want to add. If any of you do that and find out, there's a whole lot of you just felt and tingled and you realized the song and dance was a proper one and that it would work. If you ever do that, don't you ever, ever, ever engage in any conversation, any mention with that person, the affairs before your pretense. Never, ever, ever in any way be drug into it. Because it can, I'll tell you exactly what I mean. This can occur. That my scenario was you seeing your mother and you hadn't spoken to her in 20 years and you saw her at a funeral and you did what I said and you did survive the staggered time, the way that life would give you a minute or so of your mother to go, what? What? Are you nuts? To give you a chance to go, uh-oh, and not do it. But let's say that you survived it and the rest of the day that you're there with her. She's just helpless. She just begins to beam. And that she doesn't say anything. But let's say that you see her a week later. Or maybe you go off and you come back that night. You're having some kind of wake or you're having a dinner over at somebody's house and you come back. Maybe a little later she says, this has been the greatest day of my life. And she's crying and hugging and you see that it worked, that people are helpless. This can happen. That the other person might say, after some length of time, like, I am so delighted. I couldn't be happy. I can die happy now. This has meant more to me. But I gotta ask you one thing. You know, how did we let this happen? Or, you know, can you forgive me? I now feel like it's my fault. You cannot. Don't you ever. And I don't mean mention it once. Anything about that. You cannot do that. And if you want it at a real practical level, I say you can't talk about it. You can do this. Oftentimes you have to deal very simplistically. If you saw the person was going to push it, will say, Mom, one time we'll tell you, I know what I'm doing. I'm not ever going to mention that. as far as I'm concerned, that just didn't even happen. Now that's the end of it. Don't bring it back up. That's it. But you can't do it. Not any bit. That's as far as you can go. And if you get good enough to be able to frighten other people in a sense that I can't describe, they won't fuck around with you anyway when you do something like that. They won't ask. They don't know why would you. They just can't ask. But if anybody tried, if anybody said, I just want to, you know, we need to discuss how this came about so it won't happen. So this won't happen again. No. It didn't happen that time. Don't ever mention. No. This is it. This is us. You just got to grab her and go dancing. Uncle Chuck, come here. Bring Mom a drink. Bring her another glass of wine. Don't you ever mention it. In any way, don't let anybody, under any circumstance, drag you into a real conversation about it. How much time we got? Well, I think I'll stop. I got a little epilogue for those other than the public. But for those of you who sing this in the great words of Andrew Carnegie, the public be... No. In the great words of Andrew Carnegie's first cousin, the public is always welcome here. It's a small historical little joke. Apparently too small. Oh. You do it? No. Let's pretend that we're going to have a faux election. We're going to run that word into the ground, aren't we? All right, let's pretend we're going to have a specious faux election. Go home and figure that one out. Not spurious, specious faux election. All right, here's what I want you to do. And this in no way requires that you people say anything, much less send me anything. It does not require that you overtly respond to this. I want you to do it up here. But pretend that we're going to have an election, and I'm asking your vote on this question. But just you, that if there was such an election, how would you vote? Or, as many of you being good citizens, some of you, when you hear it, if there was such an election, you probably wouldn't go to the polls, which is fine. So, but those of you that feel as though you would go to the polls, how would you vote on this question? Has the time come, should I now codify and formalize this for a more general consumption? That is the question before this faux body, this faux electorate. I'm asking the question seriously for those of you who want to participate in the faux election in the privacy of your own booth. Has the time come that I should codify and formalize this for a more general consumption? Everybody else, my 1989, my first hello to all you people out there. Hello.